Encourage you to go download the podcast. Make sure you don't miss a single minute of the show. Search out my name, Clay Travis. Search out Outkick. You'll be well on your way to being able to listen to everything. And by the way, a lot of you out there have been asking for the show by hours. So if you are like, hey, I really want to listen to this particular interview, but I'm getting frustrated because I'm trying to scroll through and it's hard to. So we now are breaking up the show by hours. So if like this hour, you're going to be able to hear Jeff Schwartz. In hour 3, you're going to be able to hear Chris Mannix. So let's say that you are a hardcore NBA fan and you wake up and you're like, the only thing I want to know is what's going on in the NBA bubble. Boom, you can go straight to hour 3 and only listen to Chris Mannix, right? Let's say you love Jason Whitlock and you're up Monday morning and you don't have as much time as you ordinarily would. You can go right in, look at the show broken up by hours, and go straight into the guest that you would most like to hear. So we got a lot of requests for that. Danny G, you now are putting up the podcast, and my understanding also is, for instance, now that we finished hour 1, like hour 1 might even be up before we finish hour 3, right?
Well, we actually are loading hour 1 right as hour 3 ends. So nothing during the live show, although this is going to help the podcast get up even faster because I'm loading hour by hour, and as soon as the show ends, hour 1 will be ready to go.
Basically. All right. So everybody out there who's constantly complaining that, why is the podcast not up yet? We are theoretically going to have not only you able to choose whichever hour you would most like to listen to, but the minute that the show ends now, hour 1 of the show should be up. So you can literally go from hearing, if you're waking up on the West Coast, you can literally go from hearing the show end in hour 3 to going back to see what we were talking about in hour 1. And what we've been talking about in hour 1 is what we're going to be talking about a lot all August in particular. The most overloaded, most overwhelming, most incredible cornucopia of sports excess that we have ever seen in the month of August and maybe any month in American history going on right now in sports. You got the MLB every night, only one team now, thanks to the Marlins coming back, only one team, the St. Louis Cardinals, has any issue right now with the coronavirus, knock on wood. We'll see how long that continues. A lot of teams, by the way, now have gotten to 12 games complete, and that's a fifth, believe it or not, of the Major League Baseball regular season that is now in the books. By the time we get to the weekend, a quarter of the Major League Baseball regular season will be over for many different teams out there. Remember, they're only playing 60 games, and by the time we get to the weekend, some of them will have played 15 games. And so that's kind of crazy to think about. I think that's catching up on people, sneaking up on people by surprise there. The NBA, big win for the Portland Trailblazers. As a result, the Grizz have a must-win game. I believe it's at 2 o'clock Eastern. They're staring down the barrel with the Jaren Jackson injury, torn meniscus, of potentially going 0-8 in the bubble for an unbelievable collapse for the Grizzlies, who had a 3.5-game lead for that 8th and final spot in the playoffs. Now it's starting to look like they're not even going to make the 8-9 playoff, much less actually make the playoffs. So the Grizzlies are fading fast. The Blazers are rising. We'll see what happens with the Pelicans and the Spurs, among others, as they chase that 8-9 playoff potential there in the Western Conference. We have got the NHL playoffs roaring every day, basically 12 hours of NHL playoff action all day long. And the PGA will start tomorrow. I put up a poll question and asked you what you were most interested in watching. The PGA is running away with our poll question. If you could only watch one this weekend, the PGA with 56% of the vote, the NHL playoffs with 19% of the vote, Major League Baseball 15%, just 9% of my audience voting that they are the most eager to watch the NBA. That is with 8,000 votes cast in the first 40 minutes. You can go vote. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, while you're there, if you want, at Clay Travis on Twitter. Opening up the phone lines, the question that I am asking is it a coincidence that the PGA is outperforming its television ratings usually, and the NBA is underperforming its television ratings usually? My argument is that's a direct reflection of politics. The PGA has the least and the NBA has the most, and viewers are saying, I don't need politics in my sports. That is everywhere. I can put on the news if I want politics. I can go read about the coronavirus if I want politics. I believe most people want to kick their feet up, have a beer, watch sports. Is it a surprise that my audience is voting the least political to the most political in terms of what they're going to watch? Honestly, the ratings nationwide reflect that my audience is reflective of the nation as well. And with Tiger and a primetime PGA championship coming up this weekend on both ESPN and CBS, this is going to be a monster, I think, monster viewership this weekend for golf. But let's bring in the phone lines. Dub, 877-996-6369. I'll take some of your calls. Who we got up first?
We got Kevin in North Carolina.
Kevin, what's up, my man? What do you think?
What's up, so first, let me just start by, I'm always impressed by your willingness to not be PC and pander to the latest social hot topic. And, I don't always agree with you, and that's okay. But my biggest question is I watched the tip of the NBA. I watched about 10 minutes of it, enough to see. It's just mentally fatiguing between the media, the news, and then to turn on our sports where we all go to get away. And I'm not saying no protest. Look, protest, I'm all for it. But as a fan, I don't want it in my sports. My question is this: is the NFL listening?
Yeah. It's a great question. Thanks for the call. And by the way, if you agree with everything I say, you need to have your head checked. I'm not even sure that I agree with everything I say all day long. So I'm constantly re-examining my opinions every single day. And my wife is going to be up on her Peloton soon, and she'll be listening. And at the end of the show, she'll be like, what you said, top of hour 3 was super stupid. It didn't make any sense. Like, my wife does. I don't even speak for my house, right? I do the show from the house every day. My wife doesn't agree with half of what I say. Like every other married man out there, I don't even speak for my house. My wife makes every decision that matters in this house. She might take over the radio show one day. But I do think it's an interesting question. Is the NFL looking at the collapse in the NBA ratings and saying, are we going to make the same mistake that they are? I think they probably are. They're talking about putting people's names on their helmets. It's basically the equivalent of putting them on the jersey. I think the NFL is going to stumble right into a mess. I really do. It's a good point. In theory, you could be learning. If you're Roger Goodell, if you're the NFL owners, you're looking around, you're saying, wait a minute. Golf, hockey, baseball, in that order, NBA. Baseball's basically abandoned everything political. They were super political in their opener. Since then, it's all gone. NBA is the only sport that's remaining super political, and they're paying a price for it when it comes to viewership. Who's up next?
We got Byron in Texas.
Byron, what you got for me?
Yes, how you doing, Travis? I'm going to be one of those viewers that went up to disagree with you on this one. Even though I'll be watching golf as well and split with NBA, I think NBA will perform better in the ratings over golf. I believe with your viewership, your listeners, your show, which is a good show, it injects a little bit of politics into it. So I wasn't surprised by your listeners on the poll. But the reality is the NBA will outperform golf unless Tiger is there on Sunday.
So wait, you think – let's get Byron on the record. Which one are you watching, first of all?
Again, I'm splitting between if Tiger's making this thing interesting, I'm going to be watching both. I'm going to be watching NBA and that. NHL playoffs, I like them like you. When the playoffs come, they're just as good as anybody else. I just don't think that people are really into it like that. But I think
sorry to cut you up. My thing with the NHL is I love watching it. A lot of times I have no idea what's going on. And I think that's because, like many people who grew up in this country, if you grew up playing hockey, you are aware of everything that's going on in a hockey game in a way that people who didn't grow up playing hockey aren't, right? So I understand basketball. I can watch it. I understand football. I can watch it. I grew up playing them. I grew up watching them. Like, I understand the sports. Hockey I enjoy watching, but I just don't know any of the intricacies or any of the subtle nuances. Baseball, obviously, I feel like everybody can watch and understand. It's not very complicated. But hockey, I'll watch it, and I enjoy it, and I love it, especially in the postseason. It's a lot of fun, but I feel like that's the majority of my audience. Unless you grew up playing it, you're not. I think so. You think more people are going to watch the NBA this weekend than the PGA?
Yes, I think if Tiger makes this thing interesting, the PGA will run away with this thing. If Tiger falls early in the weekend, it's not going to be even a match. I think the NBA has some interesting matchups coming up this weekend. You got the Raptors, who are an up and coming team that nobody was really thinking going to do anything, and they're doing very well in this bubble. You got the Houston Rockets, who are still a little shaky. There's some very interesting storylines that's still there. They got a lot of good teams down there in the bubble, and some teams like the Orlando Magic, Indiana Pacers, those teams, it's a lot of good fights for that ninth spot and eighth spot. It's going to be interesting. But
Okay.
I think if Tiger's there, it could change things.
Thanks for the call, Byron. Here's the deal. I think the quality of play in the NBA bubble has been extraordinary. I mean, these dudes took months off. Many of them were not working out every day. Some of them are still fat. I'm looking at you, Zion Williamson. Imagine if Zion ever really gets in shape, what he's going to be capable of. The dude is fat. I'm just going to say it. I mean, he's not fat Sean Kemp fat, but I don't know what he did for much of the off, outside the lockdown, everything else. But Zion is still, he's only 19. And some of that may be baby fat for all we know. I mean, he's still a kid. But he's capable of dominating at times, and he is fat and out of shape. Straight up. He can't get up and down the court. He's laboring. He doesn't ever look like he's playing in any way comfortably. He's laboring up and down the court. If he ever gets in really good shape, I am fascinated to see what he's capable of. But the NBA quality of play has been really, really high. And the overall politicization of everything, I think, is what's turning off all the viewers. What do we got? We got an Outkick VIP. Go sign up for Outkick VIP at Outkick.com. Joe in Maryland, what you got for me?
Hey, just on the sports ratings matter, I think that the question for the NFL is not if they're watching the PGA and listening to that, but I'm more interested in who they are listening to and who's making decisions, and I'm afraid of the answer. I'd be interested to see what's the NHL ratings looking like, because I've heard a whole lot less garbage from that lane. So, I hope they're doing well with their league. But, I mean, NBA, I just can't be bothered to watch.
Yeah, thanks for the call. Who are they going to listen to? I mean, if they were listening to television executives and owners, I think they would say we saw what happened when we had the Colin Kaepernick fracas. We lost 19% of our viewers over 2 years. And then we got that solved. People like football. And when we just put on an entertaining football product, they come back. But they don't want football mixed with politics. And some people are like, well, the national anthem is mixing football with politics. I really don't think so. I really don't think most people think that the national anthem is intensely political. I don't particularly care whether we play the national anthem. I've said this for years, before sporting events, particularly when they are pro-sporting events. But I don't see that as anywhere near the same thing as taking specific political stances. In my personal opinion, I think that being pro-America is not an intensely political statement. If you're not proud of the country in which you live, then I think that you are, frankly, not very aware, and that country is America. I think you're, frankly, not very aware of how fortunate you are to live here. There is a reason why every year people die trying to get to this country. There aren't very many countries you can say that about, and that's been the case for hundreds of years now in the United States. Who's up next? People dying to try to get here. Who's up next?
We got Nick in New York.
Nick, what you got for me?
Hey, Clay, how you doing? I made the switch over from the mothership about 2 years ago, and you were the main reason.
Well, I appreciate that.
No problem. I don't think politics has anything really to do with it. We agree pretty much on everything, but I think it's just that it's the availability of it. That the games are on, and I think the demographic for the NBA, I don't think they're watching TV now. I think they're all either stocked up in video games and other things like that, where they're not paying attention where other folks are in the other demographic watching golf.
Yeah, thanks for. I mean, look, there's an argument there. I think that's one of the challenges the NBA talks about. They talk about how young their demo is, but yeah, how many of those people are watching 2-minute highlight videos on Instagram as opposed to actually watching entire games? There's a lot of NBA, quote, fans who can't even name 3 players on a team. They know LeBron. They know James Harden. They know Kawhi. They know the big names because the NBA does a good job of selling superstars, but they don't actually know or watch the games themselves. And that's why I say you got to be careful who you're catering to. Are you catering to the guy who's going to watch a mixtape of highlights, or are you catering to the actual fan who's going to sit down and watch a 2-hour game? I think you should be catering to the 2-hour fan game. Who's up next?
We got Kim in Indiana.
Kim, who's up next?
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I found your show for the first time on Monday in your 8 o'clock hour, and I've been listening every morning since because I think you offer a very fresh perspective that I enjoy immensely. And I wanted to say that I don't think it's a coincidence that people are choosing to watch certain sports based on which ones have less political statements versus others. Because personally, myself, I've stopped watching the NFL for a few years now because it was becoming too dramatic. And now the NBA is bringing more politics into it, and I've stopped watching that as well. So that is a direct reflection.
How did you find us?
I actually, believe it or not, I was waiting for my food delivery order outside of a local grocery store, and I was going through the AM dial trying to find something good to listen to, and there you were, and you were talking about the media and how they are basically reporting what they want, and they are critiquing it so you're only hearing what they want you to hear versus what an actual athlete wants to say. And it was very refreshing for me, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thanks for listening, and we welcome you into the Outkick family. Well, here's the truth. We are, this is not me bragging, although, you know, I always make fun of myself by saying I hate to brag or draw attention to myself, because clearly I love to brag and draw attention to myself. But our audience is exploding in a good way. And I know, and I see people emailing me all the time now that Mike and Mike is done at ESPN, and Mike Golick Sr. has signed off, and Trey Wingo is, and they're going to be bringing in new people over there. We're getting a lot of new listeners. And so we appreciate everybody who is coming and joining us who is new. And we welcome you in, and hopefully you're going to get used to the rhythms and fun that we have on this show. And we look at the world a little bit differently than maybe anybody else in the world of sports media. I think we look at it in a smarter, more nuanced, more intelligent way than exists, frankly, anywhere else, certainly in the mornings anywhere in the country. So whichever of the 50 states you're listening from, or wherever you're listening from the podcast, we appreciate you guys all coming in, and we will welcome you with open arms. I'm always kind of curious how you find the show, because obviously people word of mouth, just flipping around the radio dial, somebody says, hey, you need to go listen to this interview on a podcast, and that's how you came in. I'm always curious how it happens. Dub, anybody else we need to get to, or we need to go to break?
We got one more, Tracy in Tennessee.
Tracy, what you got for me?
Hey, Clay. Good morning. I do feel that a lot of people don't watch the NBA because of the politics. But at the end of the day, for me, if it was the PGA, I don't watch golf, but I'm a Tiger fan. I feel like the PGA is Tiger and Rory driven, along with a couple other major golfers on the tour. But I feel like at the end of the day, when the NBA playoffs start to begin, I feel like the ratings will pick up. However, there is a lot of people. Go ahead, Clay. I'm sorry.
No. You think there's a lot of people who aren't going to come back? What was it going to be your close there?
No. What I was saying was I do think eventually when the NBA playoffs begin, I think the ratings will begin to pick up. I think right now, yes, you're right. A lot of people do feel like politically driven statements are not necessary in the NBA. For me, it doesn't bother me because I don't watch 2-hour games. I don't have time to sit there and watch 2-hour games all the time. I just enjoy basketball in general. But
Thanks for the call. We got to go to a break. Tracy in Tennessee there. I wonder, here's what I think is going to happen. I think the NBA decision to put the names back on the jersey is a step towards when they start the playoffs, they're going to be like, okay, we drew a lot of attention to things, but now it's back on. We'll have the kneeling for the national anthem. You're knocking out one of the 3 aggressively political statements. Also, a lot of casual viewers come in for the playoffs, and a lot of people don't know the names of the players. So do I want to be watching the NBA playoffs and be like, man, that was a great alley-oop that education reform threw to peace, but I have no idea who it was? There are, people know superstars' faces, but there are a lot of dudes in the NBA playoffs. I watch a lot of sports. There are a lot of dudes when the NBA playoffs get going. Like Jason Whitlock told us on Monday, they have the Who We Play For segment with Charles Barkley. There are a lot of dudes nobody knows. And that's when a lot of guys become famous, is in the playoffs. So I think they got to get back to just having the regular names on the jersey. I think that's been a bridge too far. I don't think most people are in favor of it. Also, I think the NBA is desperate that LeBron James is advancing in the playoffs. Because, man, if he lost, and we'll talk with Chris Mannix about this, I think a lot of the interest would disappear in a hurry.